excited to bring this latest conversation to you with Celtics President of Basketball Operations, Brad Stevens. The Celtics coming off an NBA championship last season. I have absolutely no idea how Brad found the time to do this podcast, let alone give us a full hour. The conversation, so good, we broke it up into 2 different episodes. Also on this episode, Samantha Smith-Michael. Brad's legacy that we carry with us here is leadership and truly just being a good human and what that means to show up for other people. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Bulldogs and Butler fans, Brad Stevens, a true champion for change. Now into the thick of the NBA season, Brad, I'm trying to figure out how you even found the time to do this, but we are so grateful that you did, because I know your schedule has to be so demanding at this point.
It is demanding, but the nice part about this job versus coaching is you control it a little bit. So that's the good part. So happy to be here. And certainly there are always hours in the day to help, and especially be a part of good causes.
Well, coming off last season, winning an NBA championship, I think many people would just approach it as, oh, you've got the formula all figured out. Just run it back, right? How have you maybe challenged yourself going into this season, maybe even more so than you have in prior seasons, to continue raising that bar? Because at Butler, in Boston, everywhere, your teams each and every year have this standard of expectation that they play to and deliver to.
Well, I think that's what you try to do. You try to play to that standard, right? That's really what you're trying to live to every day. You're not trying to be anything you're not. You're not trying to do anything but maximize this experience with this group of people, whoever that group of people may be in any given year. No matter what you did the year before, each team really has its own entity, and it has its own challenges. And those challenges are definitely bigger when you've achieved something and when you have a target. And we lived that at Butler after those Final Four runs, certainly. Even before that, we were very much, everybody's Super Bowl when we went on the road in league play. And that was something that taught us and probably prepared us for those tournament runs well, because we were used to playing in hostile environments, intense environments, and making big plays when it felt like the momentum was against us and all those things. And certainly you live that here too. Even when you're not great, here with the Celtics jersey on, you live that responsibility and that expectation. So when you are a good team, you definitely feel it even more. But that's part of it, and that's the fun of it. And we've really embraced having that target, and we're looking forward to taking on that challenge.
When you talked about the group of people, and I think one of the things that you very quickly became really well known for was being able to assemble groups of people who work together really well, building team environments and supportive environments, sometimes in kind of a non-traditional roster, or, something that wouldn't necessarily jump off the page as, a championship team. What do you attribute that to? What do you look for in these groups of people that go on to achieve these things?
Well, to me, a lot of, you are what your experience was, right? And that's kind of what molds you and shapes you and defines kind of how you go about things. And a lot of times, especially if if you had some success. And I think that being at Butler and kind of learning how teams best function, learning the challenge of coaching teams, and having the right pieces in the right spots was, really important for this role, right? When you're building a team at a mid-major school, which aspired to play at a higher level than that, then we just wanted as many guys that could play anywhere in the country, surrounded by right role players. But I think when I say as many, it's probably like 3 or 4 people. When you get to the NBA and it's a 48-minute game, I think you probably need 5 or 6 or maybe 7 that can play on any given team, and maybe their role changes a little bit. But everybody else has to really understand that they are there to play a role. I always think the people that I respect most as teammates are the people that can play but don't need to play. And there's not an emotional tie or a something where they wrap their identity around only their individual achievement, but it's more about what they can give for the team. Because that's the hardest role in sports, is not knowing when your opportunities are going to come, but being able to impact it when they do come. And we're just lucky because, we're not going to be perfect this year. We'll have a lot of ups and downs. We'll have a lot of challenges. But at our core, we have really good competitors who are really good people, and they understand how they impact each other. And that matters more than any of the other stuff.
You've had to, I got ready to say Coach Stevens because that's so ingrained in me. Like, that's at your core. You are a coach, but now in an executive role, embracing that role, adapting to that role. What are the biggest differences from you now being in the capacity that you are leading a franchise?
Yeah, I think when you're coaching, so when I started at Butler, I had 3 assistant coaches, 1 director of basketball operations, and maybe a student manager or 2 my first year. We added to that a little bit, but the whole staff, including student managers, probably never got over 8 or 10, right? And so when you get to Boston, we had 8 assistants, and then now Joe probably has 8 assistants plus 5 other people that we call player enhancement coaches that are on the court every day with our players. So the staffs are way bigger, and that's way more of a challenge from a coaching standpoint. But moving over into this role, it's really big, right? So now you're talking about, you're really responsible not only for the roster construction, which most people talk about as your main role, but that's really only 5 to 10% of my time, right? The majority of my time is focused on, our 60 other people in basketball operations, right? So from scouting to sports performance to analytics to coaching staff to the non-playing roles, really, and we're all here to just support and get the most out of that playing group. And so to have an idea, there's nothing that really prepares you for that probably when you're in coaching, except for, you're used to dealing with high performers that are prideful and trying to put a team moving in one direction together. And luckily we've got a lot of people that do their jobs really well in all those areas. And, all of us together, hopefully, help us win the next game by 1 possession, and I think that's how fragile it all is, but that's how important all the jobs are.
It's a little bit more like a CEO level type of role, like you're running the entire organization, the entire business. With that, how important is having the right people and putting them in positions to be successful, even more so than maybe some of the other factors that are at hand?
Yeah, and well, the way we're set up is a little different. I'm in charge of basketball operations, which is about 60 people, and then we have a business side that's a lot bigger than that, and we have a president over there, that Rich Gotham, who's amazing at what he does. But I think the reality is all these professional sports teams, and now a lot of college teams and everybody else, they all have amazing access to data, technology, some of the best and most accomplished people in the world, skill set wise, at what they do. Certainly when you think of physical therapists and sports scientists and, data scientists and all these people. But I think when you realize that everyone has access to that, then it's really about how organized it is if it's moving together in one direction. And so, I take a quote from a book that I was reading by Anthony John, and it's called Good People. And it just says your greatest chance at differentiation is having good people. And boy, do I believe that. And we will err on the side of that as much as we can.
What makes a good person for you?
Yeah, I think that this is when you're talking about fielding a team and being in a competitive industry, I do think it's not just character, it's competitive character, right? It's like, I'm going to do everything I can with great pride and ambition to grow my own game and impact. And at the same time, know I'm part of something bigger than myself, right? And so having the self-awareness to do your very best, to bring your very best to the table for your team, is a critical part of being on a team. Ultimately, we all have to bring what we do to the table. We have to do it well, and hopefully that helps us have success as a collective. Obviously, the people that are going to share the burden, and sometimes the praise, but a lot of the burden and scrutiny are our best players and our coaches. And we have to make sure that we do everything we can to make this the best possible environment for them so that their strengths can be accentuated in those moments and they don't feel that as much individually. We're holding that more collectively.
From a leadership perspective, obviously, I would say obviously. In Indy, it's talked about, all the time. We can't mention Brad Stevens without talking about you as a leader and how you've been able to cultivate these environments. Who in your career, you just mentioned the book you're reading, who's inspired you as a leader, and what are, kind of key takeaways in that you impart in your roles?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I get asked about what the favorite books are all the time, right? And now there's so many, and I don't usually get through more than the first 50 pages of anything because I get bored and move on to what's next. But I think the three books are that I really like this book, Good People. I really like Mindset by Carol Dweck because it focuses on the process. And I really like The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh because it talks about all that's important in a group functioning well together. And I think that there's, several other examples of that. But as far as people go, it's all of the people at Butler, from Barry, who hired me as the head coach, to Thad, who, if you can be hired as a volunteer, I don't really know if that's the appropriate way of saying it, but allowed me to volunteer. But I've said this before, the person who probably had the biggest impact on my coaching, and then that led me into becoming a better learner and leader, was Todd Lidvider. And I just think the way he treated people, the way he valued character, the way he talked about creating a mission and a vision that aligned with the values that were already on the wall at Butler, and the way that he really made decisions based on that. And then his emphasis on, as a teacher, you have to put a lot of time and thought into creating the simplest message. And I've really found that to be useful all the way through. And so, there's a lot there, but I think he probably had as big of impact on me as anyone.
When you were, in this kind of budding career at Eli Lilly in Indianapolis, and probably taking the path that a lot of people would think, oh man, he's going to be so successful. Look at this, what he's going to do. And then you say, just kidding, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go be a volunteer coach, and leave this career behind and go do something else for free, for a little while and see how it goes. What was that leap of faith like for you? What did you see that other people couldn't at that time? And how did you move yourself through that?
Yeah, I think that I don't really remember. That was 25 years ago now, right? So first of all, that's a long time. I do remember, being mostly supported by family and friends, but a few questionable looks, and certainly a grandparent or two that was like, what are you doing? And I respect why, right? I had a comfortable situation that was probably going to lead to a comfortable life, but I just enjoyed the game. I missed the game. I knew my senior year, after I had already accepted that job, that I was going to miss the game. So I actually took a few education classes that year for the first time, and kind of positioned myself to be able to go back to school if I wanted to go back and coach high school, or small college. Because you had to to coach small college at the time, and it's probably still the same. Almost all the Division III schools have their coach teach, so they want them to have a master's. So I knew that was probably the next step for me if I wanted to get back into it. So I was thinking about it before I got there. I was probably lukewarm when I got to Lilly anyways. And when you're not 2 foot in anything, you probably should get out of it and put 2 feet where you need to be. And so that was what led me there. And then the opportunity with Thad was an amazing opportunity, not because obviously of the pay. The pay was nothing, but the people. And it was really obvious, because I had spent years working Butler's basketball camp, that Butler had built something unique with Barry towards that time. They were on a 3 out of 4 NCAA tournament run, which they hadn't been since 1962 before that, or they hadn't won in the tournament since 1962 before that. And so it was really like, there's something that's brewing here. And having gotten to know Thad working those camps, it was clear that if this guy ever gets a job, he's going to be special. And I think one of the things in this industry and in this business is, if you get around amazing people, you can not only learn a lot from them, but opportunities tend to follow. And at that time, when I was a volunteer, but really only the fourth or fifth staff member, there's not a lot of steps up that ladder like maybe there are in this day and age with 10 GAs and 5 assistant coaches and 6 people doing travel and everything else that comes in these big staffs.
Coach, was that pretty instantaneous as far as your transition from Lily to Butler? Was it an immediate, like, this is right? Or was there a moment of, not really sure about this?
Yeah, no, Sam, that's a great question. The first day I went over there was, I had decided I was leaving Lily. I had not finished my last day, but I went over there after 5 one day, and Thad said, hey, we're going to have a staff meeting. We're going to talk about a recruit that we're unlikely to get, but we have his brother. Ironically, it was Jordan Cornette, who and then we're going to talk about kind of what our emphases are. Sorry, my lights go out when I don't move around much, but we're going to talk about a recruit who, or we're going to talk about things we want to emphasize on offense and defense. And I was like, okay, that's great. It was about a 45-minute meeting, and I walked out of there like clueless, and it really hit me. I'd been an Indiana basketball fan forever. I mean, I watched every IU game. I hated Purdue. Funny how that's flipped with Matt. I love Matt, and so now I root for Purdue like it's going out of style. And I played high school. I played college. I was well coached, but I didn't know anything about teaching, and I didn't know anything about how to coach and how to lead and how to teach, what to be thinking about, and all the thought that goes into a small interaction, and all the thought that goes into building a system on both ends of the court. So I would say that I was more like eyes wide open, like, oh, I've got a lot to learn. And so, we were lucky because the staff we had, again, with Thad and John Gross and Todd and Mike Marshall, I could just lean on those guys and really ask them questions. And I did. I probably wore them out. But that was a fun time, and I've made a lot more money at these other positions. I don't know if I've ever had more fun than my first couple years when I was making nothing and learning how to do it. It was a lot of hours, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun.
What's ironic with that story, your experience with recruiting and that kind of being your first, like, eyes wide open, is that became such a strength for you. I mean, even just from the other standpoint, walking through that recruitment with Andrew, and that really his conversations with you just completely sealed the deal. I remember him telling me one time, if Brad Stevens calls, I will answer. Like, it was a done deal for him. If you wanted him, he wanted to go there. So it's just funny that became such a moment for you for recruitment, when that really became a strength. And I think obviously you built some incredible teams, and so I know you're extremely humble, but it's fair to say you learned a lot and you applied it very well.
Well, thanks. I think one of the things that helped that, Sam, as was, at Butler, we could be really candid and honest in recruiting. I think that this is who we are. We're not playing 20 games a year on CBS. Our games on CBS will matter more because they're in March and they're in the tournament, but we got to get there first. But we will, we have an unbelievable place with unbelievable people, and we will punch above our weight, and we will be in the mix if we do this, this, and this. But, I thought we were able to really almost set expectations in recruiting instead of sell a bill of goods, right? I just think it was much more hey, I know what I'm getting into if I go there. Which has been good here too, right? I mean, when we're recruiting a free agent or, something to that effect, number one is people are going to make decisions based on how much money they make and what their role will be generally. But then the next separator is probably people, right? It's probably opportunity to be around the right people and be around, be in a situation that you think is moving in the right direction. And I think that those are things that we were lucky at Butler to have. And so it made recruiting in my personality, easier than maybe it would have been somewhere else. I don't know how I would do it now, like in this new world of college sports. I guess I'm kind of doing it here, but it's definitely changed quite a bit.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finding 44. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow Project 44's mission at project44.org and find us on social media at Join Project 44.